Mm-hmm.
So I think that we are live.
Hello, everybody.
So welcome, Gemma, and thank you very much for taking time out your Wednesday night to talk to us about what it is that you do and what you offer. And I know that you work a lot with children.
Yes.
And I think my main question for you would be, during lockdown and people are experiencing being at home with their children a lot more than normal. Children are at home with their mums and dads a lot more than normal. So what advice would you have? What tips would you give to parents or indeed children that might be listening about how to manage lockdown more effectively?
All right. So firstly, I'll just say that during the normal school year, there are certain times when we get inquiries more than others. So through the summer holidays, we tend not to hear from parents all that much. And I think it's because in the summer, people are outside and they're going on holidays. And so even though parents are spending time with their children, it's a very different atmosphere to what we're dealing with right now, for example. Whereas when we've had the Christmas break, everyone is stuck at home at Christmas. So in January, we always have a peak in our inquiry numbers because it's during those couple of weeks off over Christmas where people have to be home and the family is, in that situation like you've been in this lockdown where you are very much enclosed, things are shut down, so you can't get out quite so much and you just have to be with your family because it's the right thing to do over the Christmas break. That's when we have parents getting in touch and saying, I've just realised really what's going on with my child. And I had an idea there was something bubbling under the surface, that something wasn't quite right. But over this Christmas break, it's really become apparent. And that's really what we're seeing here now with lockdown, is that parents who knew, okay, they have a bit of anxiety sometimes, or their confidence is a bit low, or their behaviour isn't quite the way I would like it to be, all of those issues are being magnified at this point in time. And so those things that were kind of easy to bypass and not pay quite so much attention to before, where we're in a very intense situation, we've got to a stage where parents are saying, actually, I can no longer put up with this. And just to give you sort of an idea of how extreme it has been for some of the parents that I've talked to, I've had no less than 2 parents that I've spoken to in the last couple of months who have said that their child's behaviour was so out of hand and they were so uncertain about how to deal with that behaviour that they ended up calling the police. And this was in the middle of, when we were really in the height of lockdown and, you literally were being told to stay at home, that these poor parents could think of no other option and no other solution than to get the police to come around to try and disperse the poor behaviour and the levels of tension that were going on in the family home. So for some families, they've really had a very, very difficult time. So I guess in terms of what we're seeing in terms of patterns from parents that are, coming to us and seeking out help, the key things have been children with high levels of anxiety. Some of that anxiety has actually been caused by what's going on. So, for example, they may be more anxious about going out now, whereas before perhaps weren't all that fussed about it. We've now got children that are starting to go back to school. Some of them are showing things like school refusal because they've had a long period of time where they've just not been engaged academically and they're just not used to it. We've had parents really struggling with getting young people to do things like schoolwork at home, to have some sort of routine, focus and concentration. With our older young people, that becomes increasingly difficult because, of course, their body clock starts to go a bit skew if anyway. And if they were able to be nocturnal, then you can bet your bottom dollar that anyone from the age of 13 upwards would be sleeping through the day and playing video games through the night. So we've had a lot of those sorts of issues. And then the behaviour, I would say, is the other really big one that parents are struggling with. So in terms of tips around those kinds of issues, I'll share with you sort of some of the top things that I would ordinarily share with parents, and also some of the suggestions I give to children and young people as well. So when it comes to dealing with things like anxiety-related issues, it's really important that, first of all, we've got to kind of pin it down and find out what the real problem is. We don't want to be making any assumptions, just based on what we know of the child already or what other parents are reporting. You've got to be having, real, true conversations about what's going on. And for me, obviously, I'm a practitioner, so I probably work with a child in a different way to how a parent would. But I've always got a paper and pen there because it always makes me feel a bit more official about things. And it gives me an opportunity to, kind of backtrack maybe on some things that have been said. And to really just kind of do a bit of brainstorming around a particular issue. Sometimes a child doesn't know where their anxiety is coming from. So if we look at all of the different areas of their life with them and kind of maybe score it out of 10 and figure out, how do you feel about your friendship groups at the moment? How do you feel about your schoolwork at the moment? What would you score them each out of 10? We can start to do a little bit of almost like detective work to figure out what's really going on. So I've been working with a young person today, for example, who is in a situation where academically she's not quite where she ideally would be, and has been offered the opportunity to repeat year 7 in school instead of going to year 8 when they go back in September. And so it's a conversation she's had with mum, but when she came to have the conversation with me, we did it in a different way. We did it that little bit more formally, where I drew out a grid and said positive reasons for year 7, negative reasons. Positive reasons for year 8, negative reasons. And then we literally said, right, what can we fill these boxes up with? And then we can weigh up the pros and cons and make a bit more of an informed decision from there. So sometimes it's just about really giving them and yourselves concentrated, focused time to really address these issues and not just make it something that's in passing over the Rice Krispies in the morning, but something where we go, right, we're actually going to sit down and look at this problem and really talk it through at this moment in time until we get to something that seems like we're on track to a solution, even if we don't reach the solution itself. So we want to get that diagnostic done properly up front and in the beginning. And then from there, there's lots of different strategies and techniques that you can use that help children to elevate things like their confidence levels, which tends to work as a good antidote to something like anxiety, that you don't need to be some kind of qualified practitioner to employ. A lot of changing someone's focus comes from how we communicate with them. So if we have a child who has low confidence and some anxiety issues, then we don't necessarily want to be pointing out to them all of the times where we see more symptoms of that and more evidence of it. Because the more we put their attention onto it, the bigger the problem seems to be and the more overwhelming it becomes. Instead, if we can start looking for the counter examples, so even if it's just that they responded really confidently when they spoke to grandma and she asked a tricky question on the telephone today, or they were taking control of making the dinner situation by laying the table. Anything that we can find, even if it's just a crumb of positive reinforcement that we can give them, is going to hit home that message around you are getting better, you are improving, I'm seeing good things in you, I'm seeing good results coming from you right now. So we want to be able to, really embed and enforce those positive messages, and it doesn't have to be over the top. I'll just give you one little example around this, which is, I hear parents do this a lot and it makes me cringe. So when I used to nanny, I had a child that I looked after who said to me one day, I prefer it when you're here and my friends come over than when my mum is here and my friends come over. And I said, this is interesting. Like, what's all that about? And she said, it's just something about the way that you talk to them. And I said, okay, so what's the difference between how I talk to your friends and how mum talks to your friends? And she said, well, you talk to them like they're just normal people. And I went, okay, how does mum talk to them? And she said she talks to them in the same way that she talks to the dog. So what I noticed when Mum came home was that the dog went bounding over, and Mum was like, "Hello, Freya, how are you today? Did you have a nice day?" And so the child had noticed that her mum took on that same sort of intonation when she was acting with children, when she was interacting with children. So she would see the child's friends and be like, "Oh, haven't you grown? You've got so big." Whenever we do that, whenever we take on that intonation, it kind of lets that child know, I'm treating you a little bit differently at the moment, and I don't see you on the same level that I might see other people who are adults. And so what that can do is it can really kind of minimize a very positive message that we might be communicating. So if we wanted to say, well done, you've done a great job laying the table, then we just go, well done, you've done a great job laying the table today. But if we were to say, well done, you've done a great job laying the table, it's like it takes the message away instantly. Now, it tends to happen much more with younger children than it does with older children, but as a parent, it's something you can slip into really easily. So it's not about what you say, it's also about the intonation in which you say the things that you say can make such a big difference as well. We want them to feel like that message, that positive message that we're giving them is believable, and that our tone is reinforcing it by showing them that level of respect that, you know what, you did a great job there. We can also back it up with a little bit of touch and physical connection at the same time. Our messages carry more when we use our physiology at the same time. So if you say well done to someone whilst you also give them a squeeze on the shoulder, it's going to really embed that message much further than if you just call it across the hallway from the kitchen. So all these sort of things we can do to sort of build up and amplify very simple things that you don't have to be a qualified practitioner to be able to do. So the other thing that I mentioned to you there was around things like refusal, homework refusal. This starts then moving into some of the behavioural side of things, and we'll come to that in just a moment. One of the most important things you can do, and it was easier to do maybe at the start than it is to bring it in now, but it's really about having a good, firm routine in place. When children are in school, they have such structure in their day. And the thing with it is that sometimes I think as parents, it's almost like we can feel as if we're being a bit too authoritarian. Maybe we're not giving them enough fun. Maybe we need to be a bit softer. The world's a strange place at the moment. It doesn't matter if we don't follow the routine on Wednesday and Thursday this week. We have a couple of sideways days. But the truth is that when we use things like structure and discipline, it's scientifically proven that children feel more loved. Okay, so they will report that they feel more loved by a parent who actively enforces boundaries and discipline and has a good routine in place. And it's because it gives them a sense of security. It gives them a sense of, familiarity. They know where they stand, and they know that you care about them enough to want to keep them on track. If you think about it, there's a reason why we have boundaries in our house called walls. We have walls so that when there's a storm outside, stuff just doesn't get destroyed and blown away, and people can't come in and take away what's ours. So we have these boundaries in place because we want to keep secure the things that are most important to us. And it should be the same for our children as well. We want to keep them secure because they are most important to us. And that security is going to come from boundaries, except in this instance, it's not physical boundaries. In this instance, it's really about providing them with those mental and emotional boundaries that let them know, I care about you enough to say, I know that yesterday was a tough day, but guess what? We're going to go at it again tomorrow and the next day, and we're going to keep doing that until we reach Friday. And then at 4 o'clock on Friday, we can relax and call it a day. But then we'll be back to it again on Monday. So routine is super important. It can also work for if we're in a situation where we're asking a child to sit down at their desk and do some homework, for you to be doing something similar nearby so that everyone is in that work mode. Again, think about replicating that classroom type environment. children who are sat there working are amongst other children that are sat there working. Their teacher isn't on their phone texting. Their teacher isn't on Facebook whilst they're asking the children to work. So, you know, it kind of makes sense that as parents, you kind of need to be mirroring what that teacher would be doing if you want to create that classroom type environment. You can't be asking them to work if they think that you're off on a jolly doing something else instead. You've got to be in that workspace mindset with them. Now, that for you might mean that you need to put the washing on or unload the dishwasher, in which case you need to let them know that that's part of the work that you're doing that day, so that they can still appreciate and respect the fact that, you know, you are doing something different to them. You're not sat down with a book in front of you, but you are doing something that's important to functioning and, you know, moving forward or learning or working or whatever it is that you might be doing. So creating those sorts of replications of what they would be experiencing in the classroom is super important. The other thing that they do in schools is they break the day up. You know, it's not just flat out working. So we don't need to be the kind of authoritarian parent who says you will work from 9 until noon and then we'll break for lunch. You know, we've got to break the day up, particularly for children who struggle more so with concentration. If they have certain, you know, learning challenges, for example, then we might break every 15, 20 minutes just to check in and have a bit of a chat, talk about the weather, change the subject for a bit, but then we go back to it again and we get back on track. So the higher their learning needs are, all that because of some learning difference that they have, or because they're younger, we're going to need to think about making sure that throughout that learning period that they're experiencing, they've also got opportunities to just, you know, engage and have a normal chat. We all need that in our usual working day. We get up and grab a coffee or do whatever it is that we need to do to sort of reset ourselves and to get our concentration back to where it is that we needed it to be. And then any other things I can tell you really around sort of getting them working. I think it's really important that we just approach it again positively, that you as a parent, you need to have an attitude of curiosity around the work that they're doing. Because if you look at it, and you know, I'll be honest, if you came to me with algebra right now, it would fry my, you know, it's not something to worry about. And I know there's a lot of parents going through that. I've seen so many parents commenting in our community group to say, like, the level of work that my child is doing, like the academic level of work that they're doing, it's like it's out of my zone. I don't understand it. And that's completely normal. But if you freak out and say, wow, this is crazy, I don't know why you're learning this stuff, I don't understand it, you're going to need to talk to your teacher, like, and kind of put it back on them and go, this is your problem because I don't understand it, we can expect that they're probably going to start wanting to disengage with what it is that they're supposed to be learning. Whereas even if we don't know, we don't understand, you can at least have an attitude of curiosity about it. You know, if you can go, well, I have no idea how that algebra stuff works, but I'm interested to find out, because if you're learning this, I should probably know this already. So why don't we take a look at it together? Or when you've gone to bed tonight, I'll see if I can learn a little bit so I'm a bit more ahead for when you come back and ask me questions about it tomorrow. It is going to, you know, it has been a huge juggling act for so many parents. And I know parents who are themselves having to work from home at the same time as managing the homeschooling and everything else. You know, some of them have had poorly relatives and all those sorts of things. So the main thing I would say around the homeschooling is do your best. You know, do your best, because there's going to be some children who go back to school in September who have done zero schoolwork. You know, they did nothing throughout the whole...
No routine, no schoolwork.
Exactly.
Parents are feeling like a failure, overwhelmed. Parents are numbing out.
Yeah.
The children are then experiencing what you said, is the parents are numbing out. And, you know, that simple thing you said, I think when I learned that, not as a parent, but just to implement that into my work, was I'm just going to stand up just now and I'm just going to go over to the door.
Yeah.
So that you know what's coming next, to maintain that level of safety. Like, I'm just going to get up and take the clothes out the washing right now. If you need anything, I'll be over there.
Yeah.
But for parents, so I'm coming at it from a different angle. You're coming at it for the kids, whereas I'm looking at parents, and I'm seeing a massive amount of guilt and zoning out from the parents to zone away from the guilt and the feelings of failure, and how they're doing their children a disservice and how they can't cope. And saying they don't like their children is harsh.
Yeah.
They've never had to spend this amount of time with them.
Right.
Never.
Yeah.
Right? And they would just come in from school at 5 or 6 o'clock, or parents would come in from work. They would spend a few hours with the children before it was shower time and bedtime. And the parents could just about manage that 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah.
But now they're having 12 hours, and parents are really struggling.
Yeah.
And the things that they're struggling with, bless, is so much shame that they're not wanting to talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, you can see it. You can see it everywhere. And I think it's so important that we remember that if you're doing your best, like, that's enough. That's all it needs to be. You know, if you've done 2 hours of work today with them and it didn't end well, but you did 2 hours of work, like, that's better than nothing. If you quit today, you know, providing you get back to it, you work back towards that routine, it's better than not having one at all. And there's going to be children that go back in not a great place because they have become the nocturnal child who stays up all night playing Minecraft.
So here's my question.
Yeah.
How do we preempt that? How do we preempt that situation? Because we're both in agreement that children are not going to go back with the level of structure that they left with.
Yeah.
It's almost like a relearning.
Yes.
Not around the academic stuff, because that actually is quite easy to catch up on.
Yeah.
But the other stuff, the boundaries, the central.
Back into life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Start now. You know, don't wait until 2 weeks before September 4th, 5th, something like that, they go back. We're not going to leave it until the tail end of August to go, right, we should probably start thinking about not going to bed at 11:30 anymore. We should probably see if we can wind it back to 8 o'clock. Like, that's a big jump. I know that I struggle if I've had a week off work and I've gotten into the swing of going to bed at midnight and getting up at, 8:30 in the morning. When I go back to my routine, it takes me a couple of weeks to get back into that. And I'm an adult who is somewhat, in control of my mind and my state and my energy levels and all of those sorts of things. So if we're asking children to kind of like rein it in, we've got to start now. We've got to start now with things like getting back towards a decent bedtime. We've got to start now with things like just getting ready at speed in the mornings. Is one that I think, parents can really struggle with after a break or a holiday, the kind of getting ready for school on time, because they fall into habits of things like watching cartoons in between putting their pants and socks on and just getting massively distracted. If we can start already, and I don't think this is something that we should be removing, but we're in a different place in lockdown now. So if you'd have asked me, say, 6 weeks ago, and I had this situation, I had a parent that called me and said their son had misbehaved in some way, and as a punishment, they'd taken away his phone. And they said, do you think we did the right thing? And I said, no. If you'd have asked me at any other point in time, I'd have said, absolutely take away his phone as punishment. But right now, when we're in the middle of the proper lockdown, there is no way that you can take his phone away, because that is his only connection to his friends in the outside world. If he doesn't have that, all he's got is you. And right now, you're not happy with him and he's not happy with you. That's a really toxic place to be in. You're going to need to backtrack on your decision, come up with a different punishment, explain to him why this has happened, and give him back his phone. Right now, taking away his phone is not okay. But we're coming to a different place in lockdown now, where it's okay to be social. It's okay to go out. It's okay to see your friends. So we've got to start weaning back off of the tech, people. because otherwise that's going to be the next thing that really is an issue when we come to the getting back to school time, when we come back to September. It's just going to be a nightmare otherwise.
Huge.
Yeah,
huge. It's crack cocaine for kids.
Yeah, oh, it is. And you know what? I had a really interesting conversation with a child last week who'd had a meltdown because mum had said, you need to do your schoolwork and you are not having your phone. And so it caused a big row. So she called mum a few swear words, slapped mum round the face. Then she said she was going to run away from home and go and live with her dad. She left the house. Mum couldn't find her. The police were called. And then they found her hiding in the back garden, right? So it was a huge drama over the fact that mum had said, you can't have your phone because you need to do your schoolwork. So I'm like debriefing with this child several hours later and saying, what was this really about? Let's talk about, so what I did was I said, I want you to imagine, surprise, surprise, you're an adult and you have a 12-year-old child and God has blessed you with one exactly like you. And she's got all the same challenges that you've got and you're dealing with all the same issues that your mum is dealing with. What are we going to do about this issue with the phone? And she was, and they know when you ask them, like they know the answer. So she was like, well, I need to explain to her that it's not healthy. And that when she's been on her phone, she actually doesn't sleep very well at night. And she gets lots of aches and pains because she sits in a weird position on a chair and she'll sit there for hours and she doesn't notice that she's in pain until afterwards. So she's like coming up with these like amazing reasons why the phone shouldn't be being used so much. So then I said to her, what is it then about this phone that made you feel so badly like you needed to have it, even though you've just given me a whole bunch of reasons why you shouldn't have done? And she said, I don't really know. I don't even like it that much. It doesn't even make me feel good. But when I've got it, I find it very hard to put it down again.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, crack for kids.
Yeah, I read an article, goodness, a few years ago, and it was a study done like with galvanic skin response and heart rate variability, did with a subculture of adults versus teenagers with phones.
Mm-hmm.
And when you took the mobile phone off the adult, the stress response spiked immediate and plateaued after 4 days. Say, don't quote me on that. And then when the same experiment was done with adolescents,
mm-hmm.
their anxiety went down immediately and then spiked after 4 days.
Okay.
The different relationship with technology between Generation X and Generation Z.
Interesting. Yeah.
So that attachment, that bonding to artificial intelligence is starting to sort of rewire the brain of Gen Zs and
scary
generation. It really is. It really is scary. So I'm looking at the time. So we're going to do it back to front, but Gemma Balliey of NLP4Kids, you're the co-founder of. I know a bit of background about you. You were a nanny and then you're a qualified practitioner. You've been doing this for years because I've been following you for years. Years. So plug yourself. Tell us what it is, where you're at, what brought you into this. And this is clearly your passion. You're very driven.
Right, so yes, as we said, my background is nursery nursing, so I've got an extensive history of working with children and young people. I trained in NLP and hypnotherapy. Actually, primarily it was hypnotherapy and then NLP later. So NLP4Kids is like my NLP stuff and my childcare stuff crashing into each other, and NLP4Kids was born. So I have 2007-ish.
Yeah. It was 2007. That's right. I remember it lighting up. I thought it was really interesting. I actually contacted you back then, giving you kudos for what you were doing. I thought it was great. It was a great concept. I remember that. So goodness, 13 years ago.
Yeah, it was a while ago. So I do have a grown-up training company as well, which is called People Building. I still see clients, both adults and children. And then my work with NLP4Kids is working with young people, but also overseeing our team of practitioners as well. So we work with children in the community in one-to-one sessions and also in group sessions too. We're going to be starting some Zoom workshop format, so that's going to be a new thing for us. We've been doing one-to-ones on Zoom, but now we're going to be doing Zoom workshops for children and young people as well. We go into schools and we deliver our programs there, so we've got about 9 different programs around the key issues that schools experience with young people. And we also
where would people find that? Where would people find that? Because I know I've got a couple of school teachers that I'm friendly with that are watching tonight, and where can they access that?
So if you go to NLP4Kids.org, and it's a numerical 4 in the middle, so November, Lima, Papa, number 4, and then kids.org, that's our main website, and it's kind of a bit of a spider really, because it will take you off in lots of different tangents. So there's stuff on there for people that are interested in the NLP4Kids training, which sometimes our teaching assistants are. There are details on there about the one-to-one sessions. There are details on there about community workshops. So there's all sorts of different things. There's also resources for parents and professionals, such as webinars around specific subject areas like self-harming or sleep problems. So there's a whole ton of different resources out there. We've also got our Facebook page and our YouTube channel, both of which, there's content going out on a daily basis, and a new YouTube video goes out. Well, actually, we have 2 go out for NLP4Kids. 1 video specifically for children and young people, 1 is for parents and professionals.
And that's all in NLP4Kids?
Yes.
Fantastic. And the other website was
peoplebuilding.co.uk. Yeah, so that's where we are.
Peoplebuilding.co.uk. And is that got its own Facebook page as well?
It has, yes. So own Facebook page, has its own YouTube channel. There's also a podcast that I do for People Building as well. So again, that goes out monthly. And that's all personal development based stuff for adults. We kind of specialize, or are sort of moving into the niche of supporting HR teams at the moment, because there's obviously lots of stuff going on around mental health in the workplace. So one of the things that's happened for People Building over the course of the last few months is HR teams reaching out and saying, we need something in place to be able to support employees who are sick with stress or dealing with anxiety, or, got concerns about redundancies and all of those sorts of things. So I've got a team of people that work with me on the people building stuff as well, so that we can provide support to those people.
Super. Well, anything else you want to say before we hook up with you?
One final thing I'll mention, I have a not-for-profit company too, which is called Superheroes.
I've been watching your videos, they're brilliant. Love them. Love it.
So Superheroes is a vehicle for myself and the rest of our team to provide support typically to those who wouldn't ordinarily be able to afford it. So we apply for funding through grants like National Lottery. We do bits of fundraising ourselves to bring in funds. And so when we have an inquiry from a parent who's in need of some support, but maybe can't afford the usual fees of the practitioners or our workshop fees, we're able to either subsidise or offer them some free sessions through Superheroes instead. So we've got lots of stuff that we're promoting through Superheroes at the moment, and there's a Just Giving page up for that one as well. So if people are sort of interested in getting that make a difference feeling, then Superheroes is definitely one to check out.
Yeah, your work's really valuable, and I've been following it, and I think it's great what you're doing, and it's been a real honour to speak to you tonight eventually, because you did say earlier on, you said if you'd have asked me that question 6 weeks ago, I said, well, I did try and ask you that question 6 weeks ago, but we went to that.
It was funny as well when you were talking about like kids' addiction to tech. So 6 weeks ago, I was locked out of Facebook and Instagram because someone decided that I'm under 13 years of age. And because of coronavirus, everyone at Facebook is on furlough and no one's working. So I've had, and it was a very strange experience, because there was a part of my brain saying, we can just let Facebook go. We can just let it go. We can start again. But I got to the stage where I wanted to go to Facebook HQ and sit on the doorstep with my ID, because such was my desire to get back in again. And there's obviously business reasons associated to it as well. You know, we've got a good following and we've paid for advertising and all of those sorts of things. And fundamentally, they were wrong. I'm not under 13. So that was my biggest gripe. But I did go through that withdrawal. And I'll tell you what was happening, Ross, is I'd pick up my phone unconsciously and I'd open up the app and it would go, "You're locked out, you're under 13. And I'd go, "Oh, yeah." And that would happen about 4 times a day.
Yeah.
And I deleted the app in the end because it was the only way I could kind of break the habit.
Yeah.
So yeah, crazy.
We could spend hours on that.
Yeah.
Really, I think, and so much of what you said, we could have went off on. I could have steered this and asked you. It's like, because parents, from my perspective, because parents are struggling so much with being forced into lockdown on their own, they're going through their own trauma around how not getting their validation through their colleagues, through their work, through their position, through the authority that they may or may not have. They're going through their own stuff and they're not getting supported in that. They're not even aware of that, and they're numbing out. There's a lot of alcohol consumption. A lot of parents are numbing out on the phone, and there's full families now like overly numbing out on phones and not doing the effective stuff like schoolwork and managing it because they just can't. And a whole other conversation, and certainly something that's really close to my heart, is the parents that are home that are substance misusers, alcohol misusers, and the domestic violence, and the schools were the only safe place for a lot of these children. And I saw that Nicola Sturgeon has just she's just put out a tweet there that they're going to be funding free school meals throughout the summer holidays to support families and children. And there's so many children struggling and stuck in families that are emotionally unavailable, addiction and violence right now. And I'm not really seeing a massive amount of charities that are working with those children.
Yeah.
School was the only safe place for them.
Absolutely. And I think part of that problem as well is that a lot of the time, it's easy to identify the children who are clearly being neglected. You can spot those children because they come in and their shoes don't fit, or they're grubby, they're hungry, they're a bit smelly. You can spot those children. The challenging ones, the really challenging ones, are the ones who got by because they were at school. They were coping because they were at school, and nobody really knew what was going on at home because they concealed it so well because school was their safe haven. They're the ones that are going to be really struggling at the moment, and nobody knows about it.
Nobody knows. It's not even in people's radar.
No.
There's a whole area we could sit here all night. There really is. This pandemic is the tip of the iceberg. There are second and third pandemics that's going on. That I don't think the bombshell's really going to hit for 6 to 36 months from now.
Exactly.
Levels of anxiety, and it's going to be Farmageddon for adults and children for anti-anxiety medications and things like that. And
it will be.
How can we do our best to see it upstream and support and signpost people to effective treatment places that are going on. And if any youngsters are watching this, Gemma's really approachable. Our team's fantastic. NLP4Kids. There'll be a chat box in there. Drop them a line. It's confidential. So thank you very much for your time, Gemma.
You're very welcome. It was a pleasure. We could have talked for hours.
Put boundaries and set it up. You gave your time freely. Thank you very much. It's been a privilege. Have a great night.
Thank
Until
you.
next time, you take care.